What's up guys, this is Ultimate iDevice Vids, and today in this video we're going to be doing a speed test comparison between the 2019 iPod Touch 7th generation and the previous 2015 iPod Touch 6th generation. So we're going to be doing various tests including app launching tests, a boot test, a Safari web page test, a Geekbench test, and an Antutu benchmark test. And just to let you guys know, the iPod Touch 7th generation is on the right and the 6th generation is on the left. And you can see by the difference in the labels at the bottom, there's less labels on the 7th generation because they moved them to inside the settings app. Alright, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And before we get into the boot test, I just want to show you guys that both of these devices are running the same iOS version, which is actually the latest version as of recording this video for both of these devices, which is iOS 12.3.1, as you can see right here. And alright, let's go ahead and get started with the boot up test. So, as you can see, both the iPods are connected to separate chargers that are connected to the same power strip. So how this is going to work is I'm going to turn both of the iPods off, and then I'm going to turn the power strip on, which will turn the iPods on at the exact same time. Alright, so the iPods are both completely off, so let's just go ahead and turn the surge protector on, and both of them will be powering up here. So I'm actually not going to cut anything out of this portion of the video. I want you guys to see exactly how long it takes for these devices to boot up. Now, I do want to say, definitely take this portion of the video specifically with a grain of salt, because a device, how long it takes for a device to reboot definitely doesn't reflect how it's going to perform in all areas, but a lot of people like to see this. But you can see there the iPod Touch 7th generation did boot up a few seconds before the iPod Touch 6th generation, so it definitely won the boot up test. And alright, let's go ahead and do some app launching tests. So as you can see right here, I have a bunch of applications installed on both of these devices: Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Asphalt 9, Subway Surfers, Zombie Highway 2, and of course Geekbench and Antutu. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and I did my absolute best to launch these applications at the exact same time on both devices. Alright, launching up Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, you can see right here, both of the devices are loading the app. So you can see there the 7th generation just a teeny little bit ahead. Let's go ahead and skip that little intro screen, and we're going to go ahead and start the game, the most important thing for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So, as you can see right here, with the loading bar, the iPod Touch 7th generation is just a little bit ahead, of course, of the 6th generation. You can see they're also going into this intro sequence as well. You can see here, again, it is just a hair ahead. This is never something you'd really notice, I doubt, unless you were comparing them head-to-head like this. But of course that updated processor does have that effect. So you can see they're skipping the intro screen, going into the game, also performing very well. So now let's go ahead and move on to Asphalt 9, which is another pretty hefty, big application, big game as well. So again, opening these two up at the same time as well. And you can see there, they're just getting to the loading screens now. The 7th generation, of course, you can see there, got to that loading screen first. And there you go. As you can see, it just advanced to the next screen. And of course, we get that Game Center pop-up as well. And you can see there, the 6th generation is definitely behind here. It's still on that initial loading screen. And there you go. As you can see there, it just caught up. So, you can see there is definitely a gap there between these two devices. And, of course, there's the Game Center pop-up. I tell you, Game Center is always trying to get me to log in every time I open up any game. But anyways, let's go ahead and press cancel. And I'm just going to go ahead and advance through all these different pop-ups. You guys are just going to have to bear with me. There's a lot of different, pop-ups I just have to click through in order to get to the start game, which is, of course, the most important button, just being able to actually start the actual game and see how these devices stack up against one another doing this. So let's go ahead and press play at the same time, and they're off. So as you can see right here, both loading up. And there you go, the 7th generation is actually starting the game. So again, you can see there, definitely ahead of the 6th generation by a little bit. And the game started on the 7th generation now. And you can see, there you go, finally the 6th generation went ahead and caught up with that. So again, definitely a gap there. Again, this is probably something that you wouldn't, again, really notice unless you were comparing them head to head, but you could definitely see there. Of course, there is that advantage due to that updated processor inside. And all right, let's go ahead and close out of Asphalt 9 now. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the next application, which is going to be Zombie Highway 2, which is a little bit of a lighter application, not quite as, again, hefty of an app. You can see opening this up on both as well. Again, iPod Touch 7 just a hair ahead, as to be expected here. And there we go. So the 7th, of course, you can see there I got to the, start button first. So now let's go ahead and press on that start button. And you can see both of these performing very well. Nothing to complain about here either. So let's go ahead and close out of Zombie Highway 2. And we're going to go ahead and open up Subway Surfers, another pretty light game application. So get these guys both running. And you can see there the 7th generation is actually ready to play, while the 6th definitely isn't. So again, you're definitely seeing this advantage with the new A10 chip in comparison to the previous A8 chip throughout this test. But again, both performing very well with all these tasks. So we're going to tap to play. You can see there, works perfectly fine on both. Nothing to complain about there. All right, let's go ahead and exit out of here. And now we're going to go ahead and go to a couple websites on Safari as well. Also, you see they're launching up the actual Safari application. Of course, you see that slight advantage on the 7th generation. Again, nothing you would really notice in day-to-day life. But let's go ahead and load up the apple.com right here. And again, definitely take the website loading portion, especially with a grain of salt, because that, of course, largely depends on your internet connection. So you can see here also with youtube.com, both of them performing great. So now let's go ahead and launch up the weather application as well, just a stock application. And you can see right there, once again, that teeny slight advantage on the 7th generation there. The same trend is continuing. And of course, with the App Store as well, I want to test that out. And again, the App Store also largely depends on your internet connection, but you could see in this case, it did win on the 7th generation as well. And all right, let's go ahead and run a Geekbench test to get some real numbers. So let's go into CPU inside of Geekbench and run a benchmark. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this run, and I'll come back to you guys with the results. And all right, here are the final results. So you can see there on the iPod Touch 7th generation, we have 2,722 for a single core score and a multi-core score of 4,713. And on the iPod Touch 6th generation, we have a single core score of 1,367 and a multi-core score of 2,341. So definitely, of course, an improvement, again, as to be expected with the iPod Touch 7th generation. And let's close out a Geekbench now, and we're going to open up in To-Do. So I'm just going to go ahead and run the test for both of these, and I'll do the same thing. I'll let this run, and as soon as they're completed, I'll be back with the results. All right, guys, so here are the final and To-Do results. So you can see here on the iPod Touch 7th generation, all the numbers are definitely showing improvement over the numbers on the previous iPod Touch 6th generation, as to be expected once again. So guys, as you can see here, at the end of the day, when comparing the speed of these two devices, you can see it's not necessarily night and day. You could definitely see the advantage of the 7th generation, but there is something that you should keep in mind, and it's that the new iPod Touch 7th generation will be supporting iOS 13, which is Apple's next major update to iOS, which is going to be launching for the public this coming fall in 2019. While the previous iPod Touch 6th generation is not going to be supporting iOS 13, unfortunately. So the iPod Touch 6th generation will be left on iOS 12 and will no longer be receiving software updates. So again, when comparing these two devices and considering them in comparison against one another, that's definitely something to keep in mind. The iPod Touch 7th generation is definitely the forward-thinking device, and it's going to have a much longer lifespan and, therefore be useful for much longer. But you can see with this video, just comparing them head-to-head on iOS 12, obviously it's, not that big of a difference. But again, going forward, the iPod Touch 7th generation, again, just because of its, support for software updates, will definitely have an advantage in terms of just overall value going forward. But alright guys, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more Apple content. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.